At the moment, I feel compelled to make a video on the correct theology. I think this is a very large problem. And so, as a backstory, I was raised in Anglican Christianity. I used to go to services, and at one point I was actually an acolyte who'd put on a red robe and administer bread and wine during communion to the congregation. And when I went to undergraduate college, my roommates, two of them were definitive atheists. One of them a theoretical physicist, the other one a computer scientist and an AI researcher. And so, as I studied my mathematics, physics, and computer science, and cohabited with atheists in a peaceful manner in which we simply did division of labor, and actually lived as a household of 4 males, who, to my knowledge, we were all straight. And then, however, only 2 of us had girlfriends. And so what we did as 4 males living together was we cooked dinner for the whole house on a 4-day cycle, such that each one of us had 3 free nights. And so none of us prayed at all. We just used the scientific method, predictive analysis, and so on to make a system that worked for all of us. And so we all got great grades, and we all got into graduate schools. And so the theoretical physicist got into Harvard theoretical physics. The computer scientist and AI researcher got into University of Texas at Austin computer science through AI research. And then me, who was a bit of a mathematician, a bit of a physicist, a bit of a computer scientist, and a bit of an electrical engineer in the physics I did, got into Northwestern for electrical engineering masters. And so I have not prayed to anything for a very long time. In college, I evolved out of Christianity. But I did not evolve out of Christianity into atheism. I evolved into Deism, which I believe is the true theology. And so, if you are a physicist and you study certain principles, you say, okay, the universe conserves energy. What does that mean? It means that the sun's a fusion reactor. It takes 4 hydrogen atoms, makes 2 deuterium isotopes, and then goes ahead and creates a single helium. And now the mass of that helium is less than the 4 hydrogens that went into it. And so that mass defect has released an energy, heat and light, that gets towards the surface of the earth. Now, if you ask why is there wind, the wind is one caused by the rotation of the earth, but also caused by the temperature gradients. And so the equator will be hotter than the poles because the intensity of radiation decays as the square of the distance. And so the poles are further away from the sun than the equator. And so you have the temperature gradients on the earth, but also water has a specific heat capacity that is such that during the day as the land heats up a lot faster than the water, than the oceans. And so since temperature or fluid flow is from a hot atmosphere to cold atmosphere, there's that typical land to sea wind during the days, and in the nights the reverse. And then there's also topographical features like mountains and so on, and elevation that also factor into wind and wind patterns. And so you might have heard as well that if the temperature over the oceans is hotter, it's more likely that a storm or hurricane will form, and this is true. And so human-caused climate change does increase the probability of storms and hurricanes forming over hotter oceans. But going back to this whole thing about energy conservation, let's say you have a tree. Now, when a tree sprouts its first leaves, the leaves naturally have chlorophyll. And so when the sun's radiation in the form of light hits those chlorophyll-infused leaves, the photosynthesis is simply CO2 plus H2O plus sunlight, with chlorophyll as the necessary component to make the whole thing work, produces starch and also oxygen. And so where does the starch go? Well, the starch, while the tree is in its growing stage, is actually a component of the bark of the tree. And so, again, the starch that is produced during photosynthesis, when the tree is in its growing stage, is used to develop the bark of the tree. If the tree is mature and at a fruit-producing stage and is still doing photosynthesis, then that starch is siphoned off to the fruits, whether those be apples, mangoes, or whatever the heavens else. But anyway, that starch is then stored in the form of chemical potential energy as fructose and sucrose in whatever fruit the tree produces. And so when a human picks up a fruit and then bites into it, the saliva in the digestive system turns that chemical potential energy in the form of fructose and sucrose into energy that the body can use to move around and think. And so literally, if you're a physicist and you study energy conservation and you realize how deep that goes, you realize mathematically this whole thing is conserving energy. And in my brain at least, I cannot conceive of why the universe would be precisely mathematically conserving energy unless there was an intelligent designer which you could call God. I don't think that's in any fashion arbitrary. It was supposed to be this way. And so this is why I said I evolved out of Christianity into Deism, where even with my study of the sciences, I still believe that there is a God. Where it gets darker is that I do not believe that this God is necessarily benevolent. This is the crux of the position of Deism. So, anyway, yeah. And so energy conservation, however, is only one conservation principle. There's also angular momentum conservation. And so I previously mentioned that the wind is partially caused because the Earth is rotating towards the east. But why is the Earth rotating towards the east? Well, angular momentum conservation. So a long time ago, when the sun had just formed, there was what's called a protoplanetary disk of gas and dust around the sun. And so that has non-uniform density, and so the dense regions of that disk are likely to collapse into planets. And so the gas that is nearer to the sun is orbiting faster than that further away, and so you could imagine that when the dense component of that protoplanetary disk collapses into planet Earth, by necessity, by conservation of angular momentum, the planet Earth needs to spin towards the east. Because, okay, if the gas near the sun is going faster than further away, then for that dense section that collapses into Earth, it must therefore, upon collapsing into a planet, to conserve angular momentum, spin towards the east, which is precisely why a human protruding radially from the surface of the Earth, right, will observe the sun to, rise in the east, right, as they look towards the east. It's emerging above the horizon, be it overhead at noon and then set in the west, because the planet is rotating towards the east, and I think that any human standing on the planet is actually going towards the east at a rate of over 400 meters per second with the surface of the Earth. But anyway, that's because angular momentum conservation applied to the formation of the entire planet. And so anyway, where else was angular momentum conserved? Well, if you watch figure skating, you see a quite lovely girl. Maybe she's Russian, or Ukrainian, and she's skating. Oh, she's lovely. She's skating, and then those skates are so thin that they just elegantly pierce the ice and create a little nice slippery film of water due to the applied pressure, just elegantly doing that. Anyway, and then she's in a configuration where, let's say her leg is outstretched, and then her arm is also outstretched. And then she's spinning. And so in physics, there's angular momentum, which is the vector L is equivalent to moment of inertia I multiplied by the vector omega, which is angular velocity. And so when the figure skater's body is stretched out maximally as it's spinning, the moment of inertia of that body is high. And so when she constrains her mass then towards the skate that's on the ice and constrains her arms towards the center of her body as well, you'll see this, during those fast spins, without applying an additional torque, her spin rate increases. This is her angular velocity. Why? Angular momentum conservation. If angular momentum is moment of inertia times angular velocity, if you decrease the moment of inertia, then you must increase the angular velocity. And so with legs and arms spread out, she spins slow. When she brings it towards the center of her body, she spins faster. If you go to a strip club, if a stripper is spinning with her body mass dispersed far from the pole and then brings her mass towards the pole, she spins faster. If she's spinning with her mass near the pole and then spreads her legs out, such that her mass is just dispersed further from the pole, she starts spinning slower. And so these conservation laws were implemented by God. There is no way that conservation of energy and conservation of angular momentum are just arbitrary things that do not have an intelligent designer. There is God. Those laws don't exist arbitrarily. It's because there's intelligent design that you could call God. That is why these conservation laws are held at varying scales of the universe. So, anyway, I am a deist who believes that this God is not necessarily benevolent. And so let's get deeper into the correct theology. Um, so, um, anyway, in Christian America, right, you have a bunch of people driving around gasoline passenger cars, and they'll drive those gasoline passenger cars to Christian services. They'll go to the place of worship, and they'll sing songs, they'll pray, and so on, and they go back home in their gasoline passenger cars. And so, over all these years with this, fossil fuel economy, we've just been putting carbon that was in fossilized form and not previously in the atmosphere into the atmosphere. And when you do that, you alter the carbon cycle. Or in other words, you add more carbon into the atmosphere than is supposed to be there. That leads to greenhouse. That leads to hotter oceans that increase the probability of storms and hurricanes. Increased chances of heat waves causing heat strokes, melting ice caps, and then a bunch of other things that are quite horrible. And so that, then you see these record temperatures. And so in the religious community, there are a whole lot of Christians that aren't that scientifically enlightened, which may deny climate change while driving their gasoline car to church and believing that God is good, which is the level of how messed up the true theology actually is. God is not good. It just made the conservation laws and allows evolution to continue, but it is not benevolent. So anyway, and so what I've done with this, theology is that I've leased a 2024 Tesla Model 3 for over a year now. And so not only is this thing wicked affordable for a 24-year-old guy like me, right? For the Model 3 with autopilot, it's really like $500 a month in the lease paradigm. So anyway, which is great on Tesla, they made it that affordable, right? Because I've had it for over a year and it's been great. And so other than, it has no tailpipe emissions, people are like, well, the mining of lithium for those batteries still causes emissions, and this is correct. But mathematically, even the emissions caused due to lithium mining for the batteries is still, a small sacrifice for then, cars that have no tailpipe emissions, and so on and so forth. And then further, there are a bunch of lakes in America that are rich in lithium, in which the mining of that lake-based lithium will involve zero emissions. So, if you guys didn't know that. But anyway. And so anyway. Yeah. So anyway. Yeah, and so the autopilot has 6 cameras looking in all directions at all times. And then it's running a convolutional neural network that's detecting edges of objects, rendering the humans, rendering the other cars. And and that convolutional neural network is built with Python and PyTorch. And then I believe There's CUDA as well for the machine learning, and then I believe there's C++ is what the computer is running. However, they at one point in the update removed about 300,000 lines of explicit C++ code with just a Python-based trained neural net. And so when they removed that explicit code, the car got a lot smoother, which is a deep lesson, which is that humans are biological neural nets, and then they have eyes. And so the mechanical analog is a silicon neural net that has cameras. And so why did the car get smoother by removing explicit code that's telling it what to do and replacing that with a trained neural net on a ton of data? And so the answer is that a sufficiently trained neural net on a ton of data is better than explicit code telling the car what to do. And so that's why it got better. So anyway, yeah. And so, but other than that, I've been using, a platform. That platform was initially called Aspiration, but now it's transitioned to be called GreenFi. And so, long story short, they don't invest your money in oil. The FDIC insure your money, so it's secure. Then they have a plant your change function. And so for only a few American cents, they plant a tree in Kenya or Haiti. And there are a bunch of tree planters in Kenya or Haiti that are employed whose livelihoods are enhanced with that job that GreenFi gives them. And so basically you ask some American person with a degree, would you go and be a tree planter in Kenya or Haiti? They'd say no. And so the way that the world is, which is another aspect of the true theology, is that the diversity spectrum is such that happiness ends up being philosophical. And so there can be, some person in Kenya or Haiti who is happy being a GreenFi tree planter, and that job really improves their quality of life. Then there's some ungrateful American that is unhappy, right, that would never do that job, right? So anyway, yeah. And so anyway, at the present time, my accumulated tree count is somewhere around 740. And so by the time that number of trees gets fully sized, it sequesters enough CO2 to offset the emissions of 74 gasoline passenger cars while I've been going around driving a zero tailpipe emission autonomous Model 3. So anyway, so yeah. So anyway, yeah. So anyway, a whole ton of people, believe in a benevolent universe or a benevolent God. But all these people are just on the lucky end of evolution. And so, let's say I go to a building and I see some guy come out of the elevator who is in a wheelchair with a rag in his mouth and he's drooling into it. Is any benevolent force or God in the universe allowing that to be that guy's fate? If my subjective consciousness was that guy's subjective consciousness, would I think that God was in any way benevolent? And so all these people that think God is benevolent are highly ignorant, and they look at their own apparent blessings in their life, without understanding, the amount of pain that human existence and experience can consist of. So anyway, and so the non-benevolent God allows variance. There's variance in everything. Information theory, genetics, evolution, mutation, variance. And so in information theory and genetics, you can understand why variance exists. And so the average male in America is 5'9". Male heights are modeled by a normal distribution. Good old Gaussian, right? The average female in America is 5'4", and also the heights are modeled by a good old Gaussian. The information theory and genetic combinations possible with human structure leads to that variance. And so with all that happens, no matter what, human height will be modeled by a Gaussian localized to whatever country. And so the average heights in different countries vary. And you go to some country like, I believe it's Norway, if I'm correct, and these people are on average taller than Americans. But anyway, and so variance exists in everything. It could be human height, it could be human intelligence quotient, it could be female breast size, it could be male penis size. And so when I say that God is not benevolent, I mean that people on the intelligent side of the IQ distribution are not blessed. They just evolved to be on the right end of the IQ distribution. People on the endowed side of the male penis distribution are not blessed. They just evolved to be on the right end of the male penis distribution. That's all that's happening. But then the humans construct delusions that they're blessed, or that this was some good God intervened in their life. This is not the case. So, And so when I was 24, I had intercourse with a 35-year-old woman on 3 occasions. The first time we were successful, after we were done, I said, well, how many times did you reach orgasm? And she said, I don't know, about 4 times. And she also said that her legs were shaking. And so I'm a 6'4" male who has a bone press direct length of around 10 inches. And keep in mind, this is without lying, and so the entire porn industry is lying. The Mandingo, or Fred, is a 5'7" black fellow with a BPEL that may range from 9 to 9.5 when measured properly, but then the video will exaggerate him to 13, and then use camera angles in petite girls and so on. And then the break, maximally his BPEL is maybe 10 to 11 inches. But again, camera angles, short girls or skinny girls, like Charity Crawford, who's tall but skinny, she's 120 pounds and 5'10", can be used to be ideal to highlight size. And so break is actually BPEL, 10 inches, 11 inches maximum. But then, of course, the porn industry will often exaggerate him to 14 inches, which is not his actual BPEL measurement at all. And so, like my size in comparison to break is at best maybe has an inch on me. So anyway, but we're comparable, which is interesting, right? So, yeah. So anyway, yeah. And so it's like, well, Aaron, why are you 24 and making a 35-year-old woman have 4 leg-shaking orgasms? Well, because the non-benevolent universe and its variance in genetic combinations led to me having a dick that's comparable to some of the most endowed porn stars. And then that's what it does to a woman. Am I blessed because of that? No. Just variance. And then some other guy, there's the other end of the variance spectrum, which is the micropenises, which are like, I don't know what precise designation is, but a good amount of people have seen pictures of them, and they exist. That's the other end of the variance. There's not any benevolence at all. So, yeah. So, yeah. So, but also what the theology is that it's running this sort of evolutionary selection thing, where even in the pornographic industry, you won't see many 1 male, 2 female scenes unless the male is one of the biggest in the industry. And so those kind of 3-way scenes happen with Dread, they happen with Mandingo, and they happen with Break. The male porn stars that are not among the biggest in the industry, those scenes are for some reason not as common. Whereas the 2 girls, 1 guy scenes are almost always exclusively for the male porn stars that are among the largest. And so why selection? And so there's this concept as well that the novelty of that in terms of the viewership it gets, because the whole point of the porn industry as well is to get rich off novel scenes that blow up in popularity because of their novelty. And so if you have a really endowed guy with 2 girls that are horny for him, taking turns, and the females are like a team, the novelty of that makes that blow up. But that's only reserved to some of the largest men in the porn industry, which is why for even the average male porn star, they don't do that type of scene. So and so, yeah, and so it might be because I'm comparable to some of those guys, but when I was having intercourse with this 35-year-old woman, for some reason her consciousness started saying, which will be explicit, I want to fuck you and the other girl, because I had previously had intercourse with another younger girl. And so she, as I was having sex with her, was visualizing sharing me with another female, just in those single male, two females pornographic scenes. I don't know. I didn't expect her to say that. So anyway, but anyway, and this is where it gets into my other thing, which is why I don't believe in benevolence. There are 8 billion humans, right? And so the probability of a baby emerging as a male or emerging as a female is about 50-50. And so they're roughly the same amount of males as females. And so the Mormons, many of them have more than one wife. The Muslims, many of them have more than one wife. The Christians try and stick to monogamy, right? But the divorce rate of American Christian marriages is like 50%, indicating that this whole meant-to-be thing is not necessarily correct. And so ideally, because there are about equal number of males as females, you would say that, okay, then maybe monogamy is the way to go, because it's kind of messed up if one man has 2 women and then another man has none. But this is where you get into non-benevolence. And so the amount of men that have experienced a 3-way, like in the scenes with Dread and Break and Mandingo, is not a very large percentage. And so it's non-benevolence and variance, and then so those guys get to experience that. And that's just how it is. So anyway, and I think everything's just quite messed up. So anyway, in the ideal world, because there are about as many men as women, it seems that monogamy would kind of be the thing, right? Where the Mormons have more than one, the Muslims have more than one. The endowed guys, have a bunch of 3-way scenes where it's 2 girls and them. And so on. And so, yeah. And then the monogamous Christian marriages, there's a 50% chance they end in divorce. And so, the pastor I know of, was divorced. Almost everyone I know and have met is divorced. Which means that the whole paradigm of monogamous marriages is not exactly working for a whole lot of people. It's like, I meet this guy, he's like, oh, he's divorced. Oh, she's divorced. Almost everyone I meet. So, so anyway, yeah. Yeah. So anyway, why is this the case? So another aspect of the correct theology is that this whole thing about love being spiritual or meant to be is false. And so when a male sees a female that has physical indications that indicate that she has high estradiol, which is the hormone indicating fertility, such as an ideal sort of waist to hip ratio of like 0.7, and then above average breasts, the male brain says that those signs indicate high estradiol, and so then they're preferentially going to see that body type as attractive. Then when a female can see certain signs of strength in the man, whether it's physical strength, mental strength, vision, then she can select for that in the man. And when she's talking to such a man that she's infatuated with, who she sees certain signs of strength in, then mechanically speaking, her eyes her pupils will dilate. And so why do your pupils dilate if you're a female looking at a man that you're feeling infatuated with? And it's because it wants to let more light in so you can see more information of this man that you're infatuated with. And then your body is going to start mechanically secreting oxytocin as well, which is quite funny. And then, yeah. So, anyway. Yeah. So. Yeah. So anyway, all this happening is like a non-spiritual kind of evolutionary selection, where both male and female are getting infatuated due to certain evolutionarily strong traits in the opposite sex, but that infatuation is not spiritual or meant to be, which is unfortunate. So anyway, anyway, now we can go into sort of another aspect of selection. So Valentina Nappi is a female porn star who did a scene with Drake or Julio Gomez. And then on X, after the scene, her direct tweet was, "It is too much, but I would do it again." In other words, that implies that she thought Drake's size was too much, or that she may enjoy sex more with men that are not as large as Drake. But she would do it again. Why? Because the novelty of Drake's size and the resulting popularity of the videos, they get quite a lot of views because of the size novelty, and therefore make a lot of money. And so she would do it again, not because she's in love with Drake, but because the video may make a lot of money again, which is where you get back to it just all being about money. So, money. Money is the thing. And so, Lionel Messi's wife is about as attractive as Valentina Nappi. Is Lionel Messi as endowed as Julio Gomez? No. Lionel Messi is one of the world's most celebrated athletes and one of the greatest of all time at the world's most popular sport, with a lifestyle that's, a millionaire lifestyle, right? And so Messi's incredibly attractive wife, that's about as attractive as Valentina Nappi, right, is with Messi, right? And so if you look at any celebrity's partner, you're not going to see many wealthy male celebrities that have a partner that is ugly or unattractive. And so anyone who has a whole ton of money and a millionaire lifestyle has a really sexy girl to go along with that, because then the females are selecting for money and lifestyle. So, so So anyway, yeah. So anyway, even my size, which is like within an inch of break, I'm with this 35-year-old woman. She has 4 like shaking orgasms in one, half an hour session with me. She starts saying, "Oh my God." At times she even screams. At times her eyes roll to the back of her head, so on. All the same kind of things, like in a Julio scene or a Mandingo scene. Can an average sized man elicit those kind of reactions in their partner? And not really, it's not the same. Has anything blessed me with size to make a woman do that? No, just non-benevolent variance I emerge to be endowed. So, um, so, then this is where you get to this other thing, which is that um, yeah. Let's get even deeper and darker. So let's say you're watching an interracial porn video, and then in the comments there's a fellow saying, he is ugly, and she is a white trash slut. And that's the type of white male that is jealous, and then is calling the black fellow ugly and calling the white woman trash. But then there's another type of man in the comments who says instead, "I want this guy to fuck my wife," which is another type of white man that says, "I actually want to see this guy have sex with my wife and like watch my wife have a good time and see like how she reacts to it, and then give my wife a treat." And so there are 2 types of white guy. There's one that's in the comments hating on it. There's one saying, I don't really control size. What if I could get some guy as endowed as this to have sex with my wife and then watch? And the second type of guy is my preferred type of guy, because they're so confident that they don't care and they understand what they can control. So anyway, yeah. Yeah. So anyway. Yeah. So yeah. And then I also realized something else. So my mother is, still kind of a practicing Christian, prays and so on. And I was talking to her, or sent her a message about something involving computer science. And it was a very simple thing. I was saying that this algorithm for, if you're given a list and then a target number, return the two indices of the numbers in the list that sum to that target. And then do it with an algorithm that runs in linear time in the size of the list. And so if you're a simple-minded person, like me, when I was thinking through how to solve the problem, you might say I'm going to do a nested for loop and just iterate through all possible two-number combinations in the list until I get to the answer. That's a very simple-minded approach. Now, you can do this in linear time. You're just going to have an algorithm that includes a dictionary in Python. It also could be called a hash map. And then that hash map is going to store with the keys as the numbers in the list, the values as the indices of the numbers in the list. And then with that as well, you're going to use a single for loop and calculate the complement, which is the target minus the current element in the list. Then you say that if the complement is in the hash map or dictionary, return you're using the complement value as the key to the dictionary, and then you're just returning the current index in the iteration of the loop, which is extremely elegant. And then upon each iteration of the loop, you're assigning in the hash map for the key that is the number, the value of the index. And so once again, you have code that's like, okay, you're returning hash map of complement as the key, and then the current index. And so that elegantly does it in linear time. And so I sent this in sort of text form, similar text form to my mom. And of course, my mom didn't understand, any of it. And so my mom is like a Christian woman who prays to stuff, and I don't pray to anything. And I understand the computer science. My atheist roommate who got into UT Austin for AI research and computer science also would understand what I was saying, right? And so you have different bubbles of consciousness that can be on the same wavelength. And so, for example, clever computer scientists, a lot of them may be agnostic or atheist and understand the abstraction of computer science and algorithms and time complexity and hash maps and loops and so on. Return the hash map with the complement as the key and then the current index. If the complement is found in the hash map. So, anyway. So,
And so I find myself uniquely able to understand the truth. And so although the truth may be disappointing that there's God, but it's not necessarily benevolent, and it allows all this variance to propagate, you can do a lot with that understanding as opposed to sort of incorrect prior notions of what God is. And so we evolved a long time ago from having a notion of a sun god Ra. Every day the sun god Ra blesses us with its rays, to more modern notions as to what the higher power really is. And so I find myself extremely close to the truth of understanding that there is God, there is intelligent design, but it is not benevolent. You can't pray to it or talk to it, and it allows a whole slew of variance to propagate. Variance in human attributes and experience. Non-benevolent variance. So, anyway, why did we evolve to pray? We evolved to pray as a goal-oriented mechanism. And so, yeah. So, what I mean by goal-oriented mechanism is that you kind of it's a way that we evolved to have a feedback mechanism with the external universe. And so I had a roommate, who was Christian at one point, and he said, I pray for things and then it works out for me. And so this is also an interesting phenomenon, because the whole idea is that when you pray for something, you are focusing your consciousness on that thing. And then with that prayer as well, you are taking outward action to manifest that thing. And so then, given that you're taking actions towards manifesting what you prayed for, there is some chance of it actualizing. And when it does actualize, then comes the confirmation bias, where you think that some benevolent God must have heard your prayer, which is very complicated but true. And so the people who think that praying does work, well, it works in a very complicated way, where after praying, you take outward action to manifest what was prayed for, which increases the chances of actualization. And then upon actualization is the confirmation bias that some benevolent God heard the initial prayer. And that's how it actually works. Which is why you can be listening to Elon Musk talking and say, I haven't prayed in a long time. When the astronauts were there, I might have said a prayer that they got back safely, but I really don't pray. I'm not religious. And that's because any person who has evolved to the point of using physics and the scientific method to understand the universe says that, well, I don't think consciousness can interact with God. And then it's just like this confirmation bias, phenomenon of consciousness that for some reason evolved in relation to goal-oriented human behavior. So, Yeah. So, yeah. Um, so anyway, other than conservation of energy and angular momentum, there's also charge, which is quite nice. And so in certain problems involving circuits, you can actually derive, you know, an equation involving a circuit with capacitors based on the law of conservation of charge. And so this is the other thing, like a fundamental conservation law can lead to the derivation of equations that help you solve for things in a circuit with capacitors in it. You're like, okay, where did this capacitor equation come from? Fundamentally, the law of conservation of charge. Like, cool. Where does the conservation law come from? We don't know. God. Because there's God. So, it's just not benevolent. So, anyway. Yeah. So, um, um, yeah. So, yeah. So, yeah. Um, yeah. So anyway, Deus ex machina. What does that mean? It means God. It means God from the machine. Now, I don't think I don't think I'm God. I'm not, foolhardy enough to think I'm actually God. Jesus Christ wasn't God. He was arrogant enough to be blasphemous, and then they crucified him. But what he was saying had merit. His philosophy had merit, and so it became a religion. But yes, you could have a religion of Deism in which people believe in a non-benevolent machine that conserves quantities and allows variance and runs natural selection and evolution and mutation. And that you cannot talk to or pray to any god, but you can understand mathematically what the machine is doing, and how selection is working. So, yeah. So anyway, the thing that's unique about me is that for whatever reason, the non-benevolent universe gave me this uncanny ability to learn to do almost anything. And so on this very channel, you can see me playing Clair de Lune as if I'm Debussy himself. You can see me in Sledgehammer doing a backwards moonwalk as if I were Michael Jackson himself. You can see my soccer clip where I have the ball control of Zidane himself. You can see my martial arts in Peace Through Strength and my flying kick slow motion video where I have the martial arts ability of Bruce Lee himself. And you can watch my Frank Sinatra impersonation video where I have the vocal richness and nuance and character of old Blue Eyes himself. And then you have intercourse with me, you find that I'm within an inch of break and about the same size as Mandingo. And you have 4 leg shaking orgasms. And start saying, oh my God, and your eyes roll to the back of your head. And so whatever non-benevolent universe this is, it gave me pretty much every trait in one consciousness, which is nuts. Don't know what the fuck I'm supposed to do with all this. And then some other guy doesn't have any of those abilities, right? Variance. So anyway, and so my unique vision has led to, okay, I'm an undergrad freshman. I say we should combine the 2-photon lithography, direct laser right, nanofabrication technique of one laboratory with the vision to create ion traps of another laboratory. And so we use the printing technique of one lab to manifest the traps for the other one. And then as an undergrad freshman, the PIs took me seriously, and then 2 years later there's a paper and they've printed the traps and put my name in the acknowledgements as the kid who originally had the idea, but I didn't write a single word of that paper. And so that whole thing happened because I was crazy enough to work in both labs at the same time and see the connection. And so I also have an imagination that's kind of on steroids, and I have also the attribute of vision. And that vision has also led to the 740 planted trees in Kenya and Haiti, and the autonomous Tesla that I've had for over a year that renders the gasoline cars around it, which are the way of the past, as gray. So I couldn't tell you. Now I think the notion of thinking that someone is special is highly hubristic and flawed, but based on all that's gone into me, I can say that in some ways I think I am special. But for me to be special is exactly why I believe in non-benevolence, because then you have average people who are not particularly special at anything. Can't do any of the things I've done. So yeah. So anyway, given all that I've said as well, I also can understand what it's like for an average-sized guy, because when I'm just existing flaccid, my flaccid size is between 5 and 6 inches, which interestingly, the average erect size in America is 5.16, right? And so when I'm just existing flaccid, I'm the same as the average American man when he's fully erect. And so I can as well understand how the subjective experience of an average sized guy based on how I am when I'm not aroused. And so as well, because I understand the truth in such a great fashion, based on what I've said in this video some angry guy might be like, you know, you know, want to get pictures of me when I'm soft and say that I'm small. But, sure, why not? I just don't care at, or to that high of a level to care about it. But yeah, um, so, um, so, yeah. Um, so, um, yeah, yeah. Um, um, but I'm still kind of a baby. So I'm only about to be 25, and in terms of seniority and intellectualism and building very advanced, complex projects, I am still intellectually a baby. Like, uh, um, uh, um, um, yeah. So I have much to learn, so to speak. It's like, could I, build the CNN that's running my Tesla with PyTorch and CUDA? Well, not quite. Could I, you know, build the whole um, um, 6-pole three phase AC motor that is powering the my Tesla? No, not quite. I understand 6-pole 3-phase AC motors, but not competent enough of an electrical engineer to build one. Not yet. Maybe with the master's in electrical engineering from Northwestern, which I'm starting right now. But that will be an arduous endeavor. So it will not be easy. Like anything else in life that's worth doing, it's not going to be easy. And so the strong evolve to be strong, the weak, they uh, they avoid challenge. So yeah. So anyway, um, 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 Yeah, and then yeah. So anyway, if you're an atheist, become a deist who believes in God who created the conservation laws and allows non-benevolent variants to propagate. And if you're a Christian, stop praying to anything and believe in non-benevolent deism. This is the correct theology. I'm 100% confident. Um, so, non-benevolent deism, I suppose that's what I'll call it. So, uh, so, so, um, anyway, um, so, um, um, yeah, so, yeah, um, yeah, so, um, yeah. There's content with wind turbines on the channel. When I drove all the way from Oregon to Illinois to start grad school in an autonomous Tesla for 36 hours, uh, taking nap stops at the supercharging locations, I went through sections. I think it must have been Cass County had a bunch of wind turbines, and um, I actually have footage from that road trip that I have not uploaded, which I'm realizing as well. But I talked about why there's wind. We know it's because of angular momentum conservation leading the Earth to rotate, uh, topo- topographic considerations and mountains, temperature gradients from equator to poles and from land to sea. And so there is all that kinetic energy in the air. And so when a human constructs a wind turbine with precisely curved blades that can convert that kinetic energy in the air into rotational energy, or mathematically optimize the curvature to do that ideally. There's you have the dynamo inside. Cool. Basic electrodynamics. The induced voltage is the negative rate of change of magnetic flux through the coil. And that's what the dynamo in the wind turbine is doing. And so the kinetic energy in the air is conserving energy, and then the rotational energy of the wind turbine, and ultimately the electrical energy generated by the dynamo is all, yes, conserving energy, the whole thing. And then the sea of human consciousness with brains that are visualizing and working on a wind turbine project, and like eating apples and food is also all conserving energy as well. And then we set up the turbines. But the number of human brains required to set up like a wind turbine plant is significant. So, yeah. 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 So as well, the people who think the world is overpopulated, I have a video called Underpopulation, Not Overpopulation, which covers the following. So, let's say a 30-year cycle, you have the following scenario. 30-year-old humans mate. And so a male 30-year-old and a female 30-year-old mate and have 2 children. Then in 30 years' time, those initial male and female are 60, and the kids are 30. And then each one of those 30-year-old kids can find another of the opposite sex and mate and have 2 kids. And you go another 30 years, then the original parents are 90. And so you have 0-year-olds, or just born year-olds, 30-year-olds, 60-year-olds, and 90-year-olds. Now, many people don't live to 90. But the whole idea mathematically is that 2 humans should have 2 more humans. And so people who think the world is overpopulated and use that as a reason for not having children are completely incorrect. And so what is actually happening is that America, with all its hubris and a very powerful military and a bunch of Christian people driving gasoline cars who think God is good while maximizing their own selfish desires, are in a rich country that is producing so much food that it's wasting 40% of it, while maybe 1 in 5 African people are chronically hungry. And so you have prosperity, waste, and excess versus scarcity. And so the world is not overpopulated. The reason that inequity continues to rampage is due to the human condition. It's due to human brokenness and greed, not overpopulation at all. So anyway, yeah, there's enough to go around. 8 billion people, oh yeah, like, oh, that's a lot, but there's enough to go around, not overpopulated. With the agricultural revolution, there's as well the thing of carrying capacity. And so a planet has a carrying capacity with the amount of land that can produce, food. It can only support a certain amount of people, but with agricultural technologies like harvesters and everything else we created during the agricultural revolution, we effectively enhanced the carrying capacity of the planet. And so 8 billion people is within the carrying capacity of planet Earth with agricultural technology. And further, there is enough land for people to live. But what happens is that there are a bunch of mansions, costing millions of American dollars, and then homeless people and people who can try and pay $700 a month in rent. So there's enough to go around. It's just greed is the problem. So we're not overpopulated in the slightest. So anyway, yeah. So anyway, I would say that which is the other thing about sort of monogamy, where it's like not only are there roughly equal amount of male as female humans, therefore implying that monogamy would be fair, so that there's not the unfair scenario of one guy with 2 girls and another guy with no girls. And then the whole thing as well, where you have in terms of child rearing, 2 humans, decide to build a life together, and then they have 2 more humans. In like multi-wife marriages, it's kind of weird, because then you have this dynamics where the husband may impregnate both wives, and then you have, you'd have then 3 humans making two humans. And you could impregnate both wives twice. You have three humans making 4 humans. But anyway, it's difficult to converge on anything as being ordained by God, because the 50% chance that Christian marriage ends in divorce that's monogamous, and then the multi-wife marriages of the Mormons and the Muslims. I don't know what the divorce rate is there, but is a man meant to have more than one woman or one woman? The monogamous marriages fail half of the time, so the Muslims might be onto something, and so might the Mormons. Frankly, if a more than one wife dynamic somehow leads to enhanced interaction and longevity and dynamism and three ways. I don't know. So yeah. So anyway, yeah. So yeah. Yeah. So yeah. Yeah, and then as well, when we're talking about like inequity, there's the thing of a whole ton of soccer players, especially who don't even go to college, focus to become a pro player, and then some of them do make it and go on to make millions of dollars a year, and you have a bunch of nerds who are making, luckily, if they're lucky, 200K a year in software or in electronics or in full stack software or project management and engineering, right? And so you put one of those, millionaire soccer players that never even went to college behind a computer and say, do a 200K software job. You need to have knowledge of master's level AI algorithms and Salesforce and generative AI techniques. And you need to have built a LLM before and understand all that. Like, oh, bleh, I didn't go to college, I just play soccer. I make millions of dollars a year, but the nerds that sit down on the computer and do this and only make 200K and are making way less money than me are actually a whole lot smarter than me. That's also the world we live in. And so the athletes are rich because a whole bunch of average intelligence and dumb people spend a whole lot of time consuming sports. And therefore that attention is monetizable with ad revenue and sponsorships. But all the clever people doing technical things don't have much time to be giving their attention to sports. They're working on technical things that civilization actually needs, technologies that are going to help make the semi-utopian technological civilization that we aspire to. And so entertainment will always have its place, but I'm a strong advocate for, the salaries of these players who are ultimately not as useful as technical people is kind of all ridiculous in my opinion. So, so. Anyway, so, Yeah. So. Um, so. Um, oh, yeah. So anyway, I could probably wax on a whole lot of other things before ending this video. The key of it that I talked about is that I've converged on a theology that is correct. I suppose I could call it non-benevolent deism, in which also evolution is continuing to run, and so is mutation, and so is natural selection. But currently, the rate of technological evolution exceeds the rate of biological evolution. Um, and so every generation of humans is able, with written language and technology, to build on top of the discoveries of the previous. And so a long time ago, Nikola Tesla said he predicted that there would be a chariot which showed something akin to judgment, which is a prediction of an autonomous car. And so, with all the technological evolution that has transpired since the time of Nikola Tesla, that chariot, which indeed shows something akin to judgment, is completely actualized. It exists. And autonomous vehicles are sort of not necessarily that's surprising to a whole lot of people now. In a way, the technology is starting to become normalized. After all these years of technological evolution, but Tesla predicted it a long time ago, that there will be a chariot showing something akin to judgment. Well, he was correct. So, uh, so, um, yeah. Um, yeah. Then there's the whole afterlife thing. I haven't addressed that. So, when a brain is about to die, it will play back tapes of things that were profound to it. Much of that will consist of one's relatives. And so the whole concept of when you go to heaven, you see your dead relatives and relatives in heaven is because the brain, as it's dying and losing consciousness, is playing back tapes of the things that were profound to it and that it loved. And so in near-death experiences, where you may see your relatives, it's not because you're going into heaven and actually seeing your relatives. It's because your brain is playing that tape for you as you're dying with the most profound memories of those you loved. But actually, the darker truth is that there's no proof of any afterlife. And so I don't have a problem with that. My position is simply that consciousness is a physical electronic phenomenon, and those near-death stories are the brain playing tapes of experiences and people that it loved. But then ultimately, right, just like a guy standing up, a guy gets shot in the head. What does his body do? It collapses. He can't stand up. Well, why? Because the electronic computer in between his ears has been compromised. Is that consciousness going to port to some higher heaven after he gets shot in the head? I don't believe so, really. So I don't believe in the afterlife. I don't think there's any proof of it. And I think, evolving out of a religion that believes in an afterlife is important for progress. So, because we should focus on what we can create here and now with technological idealism, rather than saying that the world is broken, being resigned to it, and then expecting to be rewarded and forgiven of our selfish, sinful behavior in some constructed afterlife through non-performance-based faith in something that's entirely false. So imagine that you get to be as broken as you want, and then you'll enter a fictional paradise after dying, which is incorrect. So, anyway, so anyway, yeah, so yeah. Now, yeah, and so I'm pretty sure that all I've said here is the truth, and so I do go by this pseudonym, Deus Ex Machina, and so that not only means God from the machine, but it also means the character who turns a hopeless situation into a happy ending. Now, in some ways, with what I've done so far, I've had good ideas that led to progress or solving problems. But theologically as well is where a whole lot of problems need to be solved, because the theology informs what the people do. And so if you can fix the theology, which is what I've tried to do with elucidating all this in this video as to what the nature of the truth really is, that changes everything else. So I think I'm just going to end it there. Non-benevolent deism, Deus Ex Machina, out.